And hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Backstage Podcast. It's happening. I finally decided to come out of that comfort zone and do an episode all on my own. Something that I've been contemplating about and thinking and overthinking and asking friends and YouTubers and other podcasters about actually doing this by myself. And essentially everyone told me the same thing. Just go ahead and do it, man. What's holding you back? And I don't know what was holding me back. I don't know if I was afraid or if I was scared or if I wasn't comfortable. And I got to tell you guys something. Ever since we started doing the QC brief with Michael Forian, which I hope you guys followed that series. It was during the campaign. We did 2 episodes every week. And yeah, ever since we started that, it kind of clicked. And I started thinking, you know what? Maybe I could do this more often. I don't know if it's going to be once or twice a week. I don't know, but it kind of clicked and it kind of felt right. And I kept thinking to myself, you know, when this series is over, eventually, maybe I should start doing solo sessions. I don't know. And of course, it doesn't have to be just about news or politics. It could be about anything that just happens to come up and, you know, I feel like talking about it. And so that's what happened. And I'm glad I'm doing this. I don't know how it's going to end up. I hope it goes well, and I hope that you guys like it and enjoy it. And if you do, well, then maybe I'll continue doing them. So that's pretty much what motivated me to do it. I'm glad I'm out of that comfort zone, so we'll see how it goes. I wanted for this first episode just to pick up where we left off from the QC brief. So for those who didn't follow that series, we did 2 episodes a week with my good friend Michael Forian, and we just analyzed the elections, talked about the parties, talked about the platforms, talked about different things that would happen during the week and that sort of thing. So that election obviously is over, and I wanted to just pick up from where we left off on what happens now. All right, so this week in particular is a very important week. And that's what I wanted to talk about. So what are we looking out for during this week, and what you've been probably hearing in the news, if you hear the news at all, or if you listen to the news, and what different things mean, all right? And particularly I want to discuss 2 little things. One, the swearing allegiance to the throne, which has become the biggest thing ever since the elections ended. And the second thing about the official party status for Québec Solidaire and the Parti Québécois. So what do these things mean and how important are they, and things just to look out for. And of course, this is just my opinion that I'm expressing over here. I mean, you know, take it with a grain of salt. It's just how I feel about these 2 things in particular. Before we get to that thing, before we get to those topics, one main thing, like I said, this week is the swearing in of all parties, right? So Tuesday is going to be the CAQ and the PLQ, so the governing party and the official opposition. On Wednesday, it's going to be Québec Solidaire. Thursday, Premier Legault is announcing his cabinet, so he's appointing his cabinet ministers. And on Friday, finally, the PQ will be sworn in. Now, all eyes are going to be on the PQ and specifically its leader, Paul St-Pierre-Plamondon, because ever since the elections ended, Paul St-Pierre-Plamondon thought it was a smart thing to come out publicly and say that he has an issue swearing allegiance to the throne. Now, whether you like the king or not, or before, whether you like the queen or not, I mean, this is all a personal thing, I guess. I'm not, the biggest fan of the monarchy. I don't really hate it either. When it comes to our politics, to me, it's always been more of a ceremonial thing and not much more than that. So the fact that you're swearing in to the queen, or this time around to the king, to me, it has no importance whatsoever. So I don't really have an opinion on the matter. To me, it changes absolutely nothing. However, I have to say that it is part of the Canadian Constitution. It's in the Canadian Constitution that every elected official, be it at the federal level, so in Ottawa or across all provinces, need to swear allegiance to the throne. Of course, here in Quebec, the Parti Québécois, the PQ has always had an issue with that, because by swearing allegiance to the Queen before and this time around to the King, signifies to them that they respect the institution of the Federation of Canada. And as we all know, they're a separatist party, so they don't really want to be associated with that. And it's become an issue again. So just to let everyone know, up until now, ever since the creation of the Parti Québécois, from René Lévesque all the way until the last leader, the Parti Québécois has always sworn allegiance to the king. Of course, they practically mumbled it out of their mouths. It was the most quiet swearing-in ceremony. Actually, pretty funny to see. They raced through that text while they were swearing allegiance to the queen. But they did it regardless. They respected the rule as outlined in the Canadian Constitution. So all eyes are now on St-Pierre-Plamondon to see if whether or not he's going to stay true to his to what he said about not swearing allegiance to the king. And again, fundamentally, there's questions that are being asked. Can you sit in the House? Can you be a parliamentarian in Quebec if you haven't sworn allegiance to the king? It's become a big issue. And we don't know. This is a first in Quebec, right? I mean, and I don't know if he's going to go forward with it. I assume that he is. I mean, he looks very sincere and serious about it when he said that he didn't want to do it, and none of his MNAs or elected MNAs would do it either. So it'd be interesting to see what happens. I do believe this week that the Secretary General of the National Assembly sent a letter to the leader expressing that the rules are clear and that all parties need to swear allegiance to the king, but that he would be open to potentially a bill being tabled and to be debated eventually on possibly changing this in the future. So this is going to be interesting to see. Now, the other thing interesting on this topic, on the swearing allegiance, is Quebec Solidaire. Quebec Solidaire also isn't a fan of the monarchy, but they've never really come out against the swearing-in ceremony, which is exactly the same thing that's happening this time around. They're not in favor of the monarchy or in favor of swearing in, but they're not really against it either. So they didn't come out and say, we won't do it. I mean, Manon Massé in particular came out and said that they don't want to do it, but they didn't indicate if whether or not they would or not be doing so during the swearing-in ceremony. So the interesting thing here is that Quebec Solidaire is going to be swearing in their MNAs before the Parti Québécois. So everyone is kind of, looking at what Quebec Solidaire does, because we all know how they think, and to see if whether they will or not swear allegiance to the king. And if they are going to swear allegiance to the king, well, then to see how the PQ is going to react 2 days after that. So that's going to be interesting. And we'll see, of course, the dynamics. I mean, it's really fascinating to me how St-Pierre-Plamondon just came in. He's a rookie MNA. He just, essentially took over the leadership of the party not too long before the elections. I think about a year and a half before the election. So he's coming in with a storm, right? I mean, the parliament hasn't even sat yet, and he's coming in really all fired up against the monarchy. And I guess he's standing true to the ideology of the party and to the way that traditionally the PQ MNAs have always been, right? I mean, they've never been in favor of the monarchy, so that there's nothing new there. But the stance that he's taken on being adamant on not swearing allegiance to the king, that is something new. So that's going to be very interesting. The other thing that, in my opinion, is a lot more important this time around is the official party status. Now, for those who don't know, and for those who follow a little bit the politics here in Quebec, to be considered as an official party in the National Assembly, you either need to have 12 seats, so you need to have 12 elected MNAs, or to have at least 20% of the popular vote. Both Quebec Solidaire and the Parti Québécois did not succeed to either getting 12 seats or 20% of the popular vote. So everything now is up in the air. The Liberal Party of Quebec, with Dominique Anglade as its leader, from the end of the campaign, from the end of the elections, has not been really clear on whether or not they want to recognize those two parties as official parties. Okay, at the beginning they threw the ball to the government and said, "Well, this is a negotiation. We'll have to talk and we'll see what Premier Legault wants to do." And Premier Legault was very quick to come out and say, "Listen, I have absolutely no problem to recognize them and to give them and to grant them official party status." That automatically boxed Dominique Anglade in a corner all by herself, and now she has essentially the ball is in her court. She has a decision to make because it's up to her. I mean, in order for parties to be recognized in the National Assembly, there has to be consent all around. So we know that the CAQ is okay with it. So the only other party left is the Liberal Party to come up with its decision. We don't know what they want. And this is very important, especially for Dominique Anglade. Before we get to those, to analyze specifically what it means for Dominique Anglade and the Liberal Party, let me just explain to you all why it's important to have party status in the National Assembly. Well, for one, you get an additional budget. So the National Assembly grants a certain amount of money to these parties so that they can be used for a research department. They can hire additional personnel to help out with the different parliamentary tasks. You get more question time during question period in the National Assembly. Also, I think there's something to do with your time during committees. So it's very important to be recognized as an official party because it gives you a certain status, it gives you a certain visibility, and it gives you more budget. So you can do a lot more things if you're recognized as an official party. If you're not, so let's say, assuming that Dominique Anglade doesn't recognize either Québec Solidaire or the Parti Québécois, doesn't grant them official party status, what it means basically is that the composition of the National Assembly will be the governing party, which is the CAQ, the official opposition, which will be the Liberal Party of Quebec, and then you have 11 plus 3 sort of independent MNAs. They won't be under any quote-unquote umbrella. They won't have a flag, even though we know that they're elected under the Québec Solidaire banner or the Parti Québécois banner. In the National Assembly, they won't have that recognition. So it'll be 14 people just floating around, somewhat as independent MNAs, and then two parties, one governing party and one official opposition. Obviously, that sucks, both for Québec Solidaire and the Parti Québécois. So why is this an important move at this point in time for Dominique Anglade? Well, we got to go back to the elections. We got to go look at her track record, and we know that the Liberal Party and Dominique Anglade did not have, a very solid campaign. In fact, it wasn't a good campaign at all. One of the worst ones that I've seen personally, and it reflected in the results. The Liberal Party of Quebec has never gotten the results it got this time around. Just to remind everyone, they have 21 members elected in the House, which is the lowest ever in the history of the PLQ. And in 2018, the last provincial election, they got what was then the lowest, which was 31. So 10 less than last time around. They got much less popular vote. They lost a lot of support out in the regions. In some regions, they got less than 5%, or 4 or 3, sometimes even 3% of the vote, almost non-existent in the regions in Quebec. So it was really a disastrous result for the Liberal Party of Quebec, to the point where the members of the Liberal Party are now questioning the leadership of Dominique Anglade. We've seen already in the news and in the papers a bunch of calls asking for her resignation. And I think that's going to continue. It's going to be a really rough first year up until the party decides to convene its first party convention after the elections. That's going to be tough. It's going to be really, really tough for Dominique Anglade. It's going to be I think a very difficult time for the party, depending on what happens, obviously, with Dominique Anglade and the decision that she decides to go with. Essentially, if she does remain the leader up until that convention, whenever that happens, usually it's within a year from the elections, she's going to be subjected to a confidence vote, essentially. So the members are going to have to vote on whether or not they want her to stay on or if they want her to step down as the leader. So it's going, there's darker times ahead for the Liberal Party. So why does this all matter? Well, because now Dominique Anglade has a very important decision to make. And it comes down to recognizing the other parties in the National Assembly. Why? And I'll tell you why. Because, and this is a huge dilemma. It must be a huge dilemma for Dominique Anglade and whoever is advising her, because we know right now Dominique Anglade is fighting. It's basically, 100% she's on survival mode right now. And, and we're talking about it as a leader. We're not talking about it as an M&A, because let's give credit where credit is due. She did get elected as an M&A for Saint-Henri-Sainte-Anne. And in my opinion, the people of Saint-Henri-Sainte-Anne trusted her with their vote, and she has every legitimate right to be elected. And she should, in my opinion. I mean, the people elected her, and she should remain as an elected official. Now, I don't want to get into the debate on whether or not, if you resign as a leader, you should remain as an M&A. We've seen it happen in the past, and that's entirely up to her. But she got elected, and I think she has every right to serve and to represent those constituents that elected her and that trusted her with their vote. Now, like I said, she's in survival mode. So Dominique Anglade right now and the people surrounding her are trying to think, what is the best avenue for Dominique Anglade, number one, to boost her popularity within the party members, and to demonstrate that she is the leader that this party deserves to have and that she deserves to stay. And I think that this is probably going to be the first step in this direction, or in the opposite direction, depending on what decision she makes. There's an enormous amount of pressure right now on her shoulders. And even from within the party membership, there's a lot of people in the party that are calling for her to do to take the dignified decision and to recognize these parties. And of course, there's others that are thinking, listen, rules are rules, and we don't have to recognize anyone if we don't want to. They do not meet the threshold that would, that would make them official parties in the National Assembly. The paradox over here is that of the four parties represented in the National Assembly of Quebec, the Liberal Party is the one that got the least amount of popular vote. Of all four parties, the Liberal Party got the least amount of vote. Now, they're just lucky that vote that they got is so concentrated, especially in the area of Montreal, that it got them 21 seats. But it's the least amount of vote. So you have a situation right now where the party that has the least amount of votes has to decide if two parties that got more vote than that one party should get official party status. So it's a really bizarre thing to witness, really. I mean, you have Québec Solidaire and the Parti Québécois that both got more votes than the Liberal Party, and they're waiting for Dominique Anglade to decide their fate. So it's really bizarre, and I've never seen anything like this happen before. So what's going to happen right now, and why do I think that this is important going forward for the party and for Dominique Anglade? It's a huge dilemma, and obviously it's a huge decision. Assuming that Dominique Anglade does not grant official party status to those two parties, okay, what does that mean? Well, first of all, and I'm telling you this from within the party, okay? So within the liberal membership. First of all, from Dominique Anglade's perspective, it's a decision that would probably reinforce her leadership, right? She's making a stand and saying, listen, rules are rules. I don't care. You didn't make the threshold, and I won't recognize you, okay? It's going to, certain members of the party think that that's going to make her stand out and actually show some form of leadership that perhaps they didn't see before, and especially not during the campaign. The other positive thing is that by not recognizing the other parties and by not granting them official party status, it gives the entire visibility to the Liberal Party of Quebec, which is something that is a must at this point in time. Like I said, both Dominique Anglade and the Liberal Party of Quebec are on survival mode right now. And if she recognizes the other parties, she loses precious time in question period, and obviously that means visibility. And she gives all that aspect to the other parties. It's like handing it over on a silver platter and saying, here, okay, I'll step back and here, you guys take this visibility and you guys get the attention. So this is very important for her. So strategically, she wants to get that visibility. She wants to boost that party image. However, by doing so, it may give this negative image of her as someone that either doesn't respect her opponents in the House, someone obviously that perhaps doesn't respect the electorate, because let's be honest over here, there's way more people that voted for those two parties than that voted for her own party. So by not giving them official party status, to a certain degree, indirectly, you're kind of telling the electorate, the people, the citizens of Quebec, that I don't care about your vote. I don't care what you did and what you decided to vote, and you will not have your voice heard in the National Assembly. I may be extreme by saying that, but it's pretty much that. I mean, when you consider that there's way more people in Quebec that voted for those two parties than for yours, and you're telling those two parties, listen, your voice won't be heard, indirectly, you're telling those citizens that your voice doesn't matter. So it's a huge dilemma. Many have called her irresponsible. Manon Massé has come out and has called on Dominique Anglade to do the responsible thing, that she won't be able to uphold the control of Parliament as the only opposition when you have 14 other people just floating around. So she's questioning Dominique Anglade's ability to do that on her own. She believes that she won't be able to do it on her own, and that she needs those two other parties to maintain some sort of cohesion in Parliament as solid opposition altogether, not just the Liberal Party, but as an opposition, Liberals, QS, and PQ. So this is what might happen if she doesn't recognize them, or if she doesn't want to grant them official party status. If she does grant them official party status, some members of the Liberal Party might see her as very weak and lacking leadership, and it's going to be just the same Dominique Anglade that they've seen ever since she was brought to the leadership, and that weak leader that we saw during the elections, and it's just going to be one continuation of that very weak leadership that ultimately needs to change in the party. It may be a good thing for her image that, look, I'm doing the right thing, the responsible thing, the fair thing, and letting these parties have official status, respecting the electorate that gave them their vote, respecting that electorate for having a voice, for having its voice heard in the National Assembly. So maybe in terms of her image, she'll be seen as the nice and kind politician that wants to respect the other parties and their ability to effectively do their work in Parliament. But it definitely won't help her keep her seat, I think. I think her leadership is going to come to an end immediately by doing so. I don't know how the party will be able to bounce back in terms of visibility, popularity, whatever you want to call it, by losing that precious time it has in the National Assembly to be able to plant its foot down and assert its leadership in the House as the official opposition, as the only opposition group in the National Assembly. It's going to be a very big decision. She hasn't yet made her decision public. We don't know what's going to happen, and I can assure you that the majority of the membership of the Liberal Party is waiting to see what's going to happen. Is this going to be a sign of a strong leader by her refusing to grant him official party status, or is it going to be just the same thing like we've been used to seeing, and there we go, we just cave in to our opponents and we're giving them all the room, and we knew it. I mean, it's Dominique Anglade and she's gonna have to go anyway. So this is a very big decision for her. I have no idea what's being said, what's being thought, and how she's being advised on the matter. My personal opinion, I mean, politics is a tough sport, and you have to accept the punches that come with it. And if I were in her position, I'm not so sure if I would grant the other party's official status. And, you can call me mean, or you can call me ungrateful, or you can call me whatever you want to call me. But I can very easily just come out and say, rules are rules, and they did not meet the threshold, and that's it. And profit 100% from that status as an official opposition, from the time and the attention that you're going to get and the visibility that you're going to get in opposition, in committee work. Automatically, you paralyze your opponent by reducing significantly their operation budget that they're going to have up on the Hill. It's a huge uppercut for those parties not to have those additional funds to be able to operate. And at this point, and again, this is not in general, I'm saying this is how I think, given the actual context, right? You have a party that has got its worst results. There's a party that is currently thinking, how do we bounce back from this? And one way to bounce back from this is to completely erase your competition. And your competition right now is two parties that, in my opinion, have much more effective leaders, much more effective communicators. So everything that can hinder Dominique Anglade in this next mandate. So I think that, considering all these things, I would probably cut off that oxygen from the opposition. And I know it's tough. And again, I'm saying this for this episode. Maybe if I were in those shoes, maybe I do differently. I don't know. Off the top of my head right now, that's my reflex. That's what I would do. It's up to those parties to do whatever they have to do. And if they want to have official party status, then maybe they can just merge and have 14 members. And with 14 members, well, then they get automatic official party status, and they can figure out themselves how they're going to break that down, because it's obviously two parties, but it is two parties that are somewhat linked. They're in ideology. They're both separatist parties. Of course, their positions on other things vary quite a lot. But look, it's an option. If they want the official party status, then look, get together, make 14 people all together, 14 MNAs, get your official party status, and figure out how you're going to break it down. Figure out how to break down the funds, who gets what, and split the time between you. I don't know. So it's up to them. I would literally just throw the ball back in their court and say, look, I'm not recognizing you. You guys figure it out. And at this point in time, I need to figure out my party's survival. And not only my party's survival, but my own survival as the leader. Now, knowing Dominique Anglade personally, I think, she's a great woman. She's very kind. She's obviously a person that is collaborative. She respects the institutions. All that I can say with 100% certainty. Is she going to go that route? I don't know. I don't know how she's being advised. But I think it would be the first step in her future and in the party's future on whether or not she recognizes these parties. And I think it's going to play in a lot with what's going to happen going forward with her leadership, and how the party maybe could have some better chances on its side to bounce back. I don't know. Now, for those wondering, we've seen this happen in the past where parties were not recognized. I think back in 1989, the Parti Québécois was in opposition. They didn't grant official party status to the Equality Party back in the days. For those who remember our history, some people defected from the Liberal Party, created the Equality Party. They got 4 people elected in the 1989 election. Parti Québécois didn't grant them official party status. I believe in 2008, when Amir Kadir was the only elected MNA for Quebec Solidaire, I could be wrong here, but I don't think he was granted official party status either. He was the only one. That came later, obviously. But in 2018, both the Parti Québécois and Quebec Solidaire each got 10 seats, and they were just shy of 20% also back in that day, however, they were granted official party status. They had negotiated among themselves. They had talked it over, and they decided that, okay, we'll grant you official party status. And what happened? The Liberal Party went down. Quebec Solidaire went up. The PQ almost lost complete credibility. They ended up with 3 seats. But, I mean, they were the third. They were the third opposition in the House. So, I mean, that's really reduced visibility, reduced time for questions, less people present in your committees. And look what happened. They just kept going down. So, again, I don't know what Dominique Anglade is going to do. I'm looking at it specifically just from a strategic position. I personally would not grant him party status. At this point, you have to look at the survival of your own party. And I do think that granting official party status will be to the detriment of the Liberal Party and definitely to the detriment of Dominique Anglade's leadership. So, yeah, that's it. I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen this week. I hope you guys follow that swearing-in ceremony. If it's something that you like, it's going to happen throughout the entire week. Looking forward to seeing who Premier Legault appoints to cabinet. There's a bunch of new MNAs that have a lot of potential and competence to take on those roles. Who's going to get cut? Obviously, someone's going to get cut. And who's going to move around? Who's going to get demoted? Who's going to get promoted? All this is going to be interesting, and that's coming up on Thursday. So there you have it, guys. That was the first solo episode that I put up for Backstage Podcast. I hope you enjoyed. If you do enjoy it, head on over to Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcast from. Rate the podcast. Give it a 5-star, guys. Help us out. Help us build the podcast, build the audience. And if you're like me and you enjoy more visual content, well, subscribe to the YouTube page and help that community grow. I think I'm going to do this again. I think maybe there'll be another episode in this week. Maybe on Thursday or Friday, depending on how I feel and how this goes and the reactions I get from the people. Let me know how you feel about these solo episodes. From my end, I mean, it's only about 20-30 minutes of my time. I have no idea how long this episode has been running for. But I think I can get used to it. I don't know. I mean, it's weird talking to myself into this mic and looking into a camera. But I hope that you enjoyed it. So thank you all so much. See you guys all in the next episode. Take care.